Welcome back. With inflation and gas prices continuing to hit record highs, Democrats appear to be out of gas on how to handle the situation and how to answer questions on possible solutions. New York Senator Chuck Schumer claims the only way to reduce inflation caused by the Biden administration, mind you, is by raising taxes on Americans.
If you want to get rid of inflation, the only way to do it is to undo a lot of the Trump tax cuts and raise rates. No Republican is ever going to do that. So the only way to get rid of inflation is through reconciliation.
Then there are some Democrats like Georgia Senator John Ossoff who don't have any idea where to even begin on a solution to the problem, so spew out what many call a whole lot of, quote, word salad.
When somebody says to you, what are Democrats doing to address inflation, what do you say?
Well, look, the economic stress that begins with the global pandemic, unprecedented effects on supply chains, unemployment in the middle of 2020 that was over 14%, massive economic ripple effects in every region of the world. And a massive fiscal and monetary response. All the associated shocks to our logistics infrastructure have all taken a toll. Families in my state of Georgia and families across the country are struggling with the rapidly rising prices of staples like groceries and gasoline. Congress has a role to play. The Fed has a role to play because it's something that affects families in my state and states across the country every single day.
And finally, there are some, like White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, who just flat out ignore or dodge the question entirely.
Back tomorrow first thing. Thank you so much, everyone.
Jen, Americans continue to suffer on high gas prices, especially low-income Americans, Jen.
This all comes as the Senate this week confirmed Lael Brainerd to be the Federal Reserve's next vice chair in the central bank hopes of combating high inflation. Analysts say Brainerd's promotion is not likely to change the Fed's plan to increase short-term interest rates to try and deal with inflation. Joining me now to break it all down, Executive Director at Taxpayers Protection Alliance, Patrick Hedger. Patrick, welcome on.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So Biden's plan seems to be no plan. And with Chuck Schumer saying the only way to get rid of inflation is through reconciliation. It's a catchy phrase, but what does it even mean? Is this the new norm for America and an extremely weak dollar?
Yeah, that's a great question. And something I heard him say there, through reconciliation. Well, what the Democrats are talking about with budget reconciliation is raising taxes and then spending more money. The entire point of having reconciliation at this point is to try and get some version of the BBB or the Build Back Better plan through. So even if they do raise taxes, the plan is to immediately take those tax dollars and push them out the door. The issue is government spending. You can fight inflation by cutting government spending and without raising a single tax dollar. So the idea that the only way to do it is by raising taxes is totally ridiculous. And he's just kind of lying right there because they're not talking about using reconciliation just to raise taxes. They're talking about doing it to increase spending as well. And that will only increase the cycle of inflation. And people will raise their prices in expectation of higher taxes.
Very, very well. You know, this is a very complicated topic, but in your expert opinion, what choices does the Fed have to combat inflation? I know you just touched on it a little bit, but what does it mean for interest rates? And I don't think just undoing Trump tax cuts is the final end-all be-all.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, if anything, folks need that extra money in their pocket to deal with inflation right now. So raising taxes again just to push that money out the door and new government spending is not going to solve the problem. What the Fed should do, you're going to necessarily need to see gradually increasing interest rates. But the big problem we have right now in the economy is all of the different shocks, right? The economy is a boat that likes stability, and you've got the pandemic that rocked the boat, and now you've got war in Europe that's rocking the boat. The last thing you need is the government to begin rocking the boat. But the Biden administration has been doing that with trillions and trillions in new spending, talking about massive tax increases, new regulation. So if the Fed comes in and all of a sudden just hikes interest rates, that is instability. Right. So ultimately, you need a steady hand at the helm.
Right. We have all these outside forces that it doesn't help. We know our government rocking the boat, like you just said. Speaking of this, and this is a good question for many people just getting into the market. When is a good time to invest? Because the way it's looking now, not so great. But what is the trajectory maybe after a war?
Yeah. So, well, the best time to invest is usually determined by your age, right? There's really never a bad time to invest if you're a young person because over a lifetime, the stock market produces incredible returns. But lots of folks say, hey, buy the dip. If you're investing over the long term, there's nothing wrong with taking advantage of a discounted market at this point. And this will turn around. The situation will resolve. Market's clear. We saw that after 2008, the crisis in 2008. We saw record growth after that. So when markets clear and bad investments are cleared out of the market, the rewards come to the good investments. And I would recommend folks, I'm not a financial advisor.
Moving on now, we talk a lot about the Biden administration and student debt forgiveness. He's kind of not fulfilled his promise on that one. Can you tell us what that would mean for Americans if he decides to extend it?
Yeah, so this is a huge problem because really you're papering over the fundamental problem with higher education in this country, and that is the massive amount of subsidies that have been put into higher education through discounted student loan rates, and the federal government, really loaning out at very low rates a tremendous amount of money to young borrowers. That's incentivized universities to pursue all sorts of wasteful spending on administrators. Some universities have built water parks, all of this unnecessary stuff. And so kind of rewarding that bad behavior by trying to continue to subsidize student loans or forgiving student loans is going to cause more long-term pain for future students and more expensive education in the future.
I never looked at it that way. I just thought, it was a little bit of generosity, but there is long-term implications. Interesting. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a pretty solid correlation between the things the government subsidizes and the increase in price. You look at anything from the mortgage interest deduction to education to healthcare. All of these things are massively subsidized by the government, and you continue to see massive price increases that outstrip even the high inflation we're seeing today. So for the Biden administration to suggest that a solution to the student loans crisis is to forgive or continue to delay payments on the existing debt, that is encouraging more reckless borrowing in the future and more reckless spending by universities. Ultimately, it's not a popular solution, but the cure doesn't always taste good, and that's going to require tightening some controls on federal dollars that flow into the higher education system to make sure it's not being wasted and make sure that students, those dollars are going to providing a core education, not luxury features like a water park.
Absolutely. So bad, good for the taxpayer, bad for all my friends still trying to, pay their final debts. But anyways, Patrick, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you.